So we are going to start our session 16. Very nervous, equally excited to introduce you with all of these wonderful panelists we have today for the discussion on holistic approaches for LGBTI asylum seekers integration. And we have Micro Rainbow together with us to do the panel. Before we start the panel discussion today, I would like to talk about the housekeeping. This is a day of Soldier Conf, and we're very happy to welcome you to our panel discussion here. We have 3 panel members speaking today, and there will be a presentation from Micro Rainbow and a short video explaining what Micro Rainbow is doing. We'll have the panelists speaking. It will take about 30 minutes altogether. Hopefully, I would like to remind all the speakers today to keep to time. And we have then Q&A following the panel discussion, which will be for 30 minutes, where all the participants will be able to write their questions, type their questions and comments using the chat function, and we will select as many as possible. Is there time to discuss? Because of the high number of participants, I hope it increases more, because we need more people to join in, so we have more interesting thoughts and comments and questions. And also, in the interest of confidentiality, we are unfortunately not able to open the session up for an oral question session. Presentations will be recorded and posted online, but the Q&A will not. Yeah, and information about the speakers and panel members is on the conference page of Sojica website, sojica.org, and you can go to Final Conference to read more over there. I'm very happy to have this panel working together with my colleague Ezra Di Mirko Colosio. She will be facilitating with me today, and I will be chairing it. My name is Anbid Zaman, and I'm an LGBTI activist from Bangladesh. Started working for LGBTI rights at the age of 16, like many of you know, Greta Thunberg, and had to move out from Bangladesh because of the hostility and political instability in Bangladesh at the age of 20, almost 4 years ago. And then came to Germany, found myself surrounded by a wonderful community to support in terms of integration or inclusion, and also had opportunity to work together with organizations in Germany and Europe for fighting for LGBTI human rights, and also had the opportunity to work together with Sojica very closely in terms of being in the advisory board, and also working in field work like going to court cases and collecting data, which also helped me to understand more about how holistic how hostile the environment is, and how difficult it can get for many of our friends and newcomers who make their way to Europe or elsewhere to seek refuge, to find a better situation, a better life. And somehow I think I was quite lucky enough to have the support and have have the support and my right, actually, that I somehow could get the services from government organization and institutions, which is my right. And many of us are actually denied to that. And that's what I think is interesting today to talk about, that what is actually happening in terms of integration and what it actually means, and how we can have better approaches to that. And if it's about really just, I mean, when I think about integration, it just makes me think about as a refugee myself, that, oh, do I have to speak without an accent in a German language and dress like a German lady? So yeah, so I'm very happy to have you all here, and we are having a wonderful, exciting panel discussion. And I would like to give the floor to Ezra, if Ezra would like to talk about a little herself.
Hi everyone, I'm Esra Demirkol-Koloze. Actually, I am the technical person in this session, but still, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk as well. I'm from Turkey, and I lived in the UK for a while for my education. And both in the UK and Turkey, I did. I was part of different organizations, and normally I'm working on immigrant families, but thanks to these different organizations, I managed to engage with different groups from the different part of the societies. And I think it's really important being part of any activist groups, because especially if you are from Turkey, where human rights are violated every single second, you have to do something. You have to work with people, work for people, because yeah, it is just unequal. It's a huge inequality going on. It's everywhere, but unfortunately, this part of the world is going much more crazy. And especially if we think about all the refugees and asylum seekers, we don't know what will happen to us tomorrow. So we have to do our best today. Maybe we are not refugees or asylum seekers, but still we should do our best. So I try my best. And thanks to Sojika team, since last year, I've been volunteering with them and I learn a lot. And last couple of days, it was really, really stimulating for me. I'm really happy being part of this conference. And yeah, thank you. This is from me.
Thank you very much. And also to the information about how long we will have the session today is from 11 a.m. till 12:15 p.m. British time, which is just 1 hour behind the Central European time, in total 75 minutes. So now I'm going to introduce you with our wonderful panelists from Micro Rainbow. First, I would like to introduce Alana Aiza, who is a trans refugee from Malaysia and was one of the first people to access Micro Rainbow's housing program in 2017. After gaining refugee status, she continued her education at Birkbeck College and worked for Legal and General, while also becoming a board member for Micro Rainbow. Alana is passionate about trans healthcare. Thank you, Alana, to be here. We also have Laura Goodwin, who is the LBTI Women's Outreach Officer at Micro Rainbow. Lara meets with LBTI asylum seekers, as in lesbian, bisexual, trans, and intersex asylum seekers on a regular basis to facilitate access to Micro Rainbow housing and socioeconomic inclusion programs, and to support them to access other services they need. Lara has also consulted for a number of international NGOs, including being a researcher for ILGA World updated trans legal mapping report. Thank you, Laura, for joining us as well. And we have Barry O'Leary, is an immigration and nationality lawyer at Westlake Rick Solicitors LLP in London. And he has represented asylum seekers with SOGI claims since the early 2000s. He's a member of the SOGICA Project Advisory Board, a director of Micro Rainbow, and a volunteer for the UK Lesbian and Gay Immigration Group. Thank you very much for joining us today here. So I would like to give the floor to Lara Goodwin to start your presentation. And yeah, here you go.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ambid, for the introductions. And I hope that we can see a little bit more of your outfit before the end of this presentation, because it's fantastic. And thank you to everyone else for joining us as well, and to Sojika for having Micro Rainbow as a panel today. I'm just going to share my screen so I can begin the presentation. So today I'm going to start with an overview of Micro Rainbow, and then we're going to go into more of a discussion with Barry and Alana about Micro Rainbow's work, and to give a little bit more context about what Micro Rainbow does. So Micro Rainbow is one of the leading organisations supporting LGBTI asylum seekers and refugees in the UK. And we help around 300 people per year across our 3 programmes. And whilst there's a lack of disaggregated data in the UK about LGBTI asylum seekers and refugees specifically, the research that does exist shows a need for services that are multifaceted and holistic. Micro Rainbow's 3 programmes, so the social inclusion programme, the safe housing programme, and the economic inclusion and moving on programme, try to offer this holistic support. And these 3 programmes are the pillars of our work, and they combine and overlap to ensure that the people we're working with receive well-rounded and effective support. The first of our programmes is a social inclusion programme, and this is based on building friendships and community and reducing isolation. LGBTI asylum seekers often are isolated and have to go through traumatizing experiences of reliving persecution or violence that they've faced. And specifically for LGBTI asylum seekers, they may not be able to access, support networks that people might traditionally, so with their family members, with co-nationals, or in religious spaces. So through our work, through our research, and through having daily conversations with the asylum seekers we work with, we know that some of the biggest issues people face is low self-esteem, low confidence, a lack of support networks, and also poor mental health as well. So what Micro Rainbow have done, and what we do as part of our social inclusion programme, is run therapeutic workshops in a non-traumatizing environment. We don't ask anyone to relive any traumatizing experiences, but what we do is try and help people to use creativity to help heal trauma. We have ordinarily, when we can all be face-to-face, we have weekly sessions where we do activities such as mindfulness, music workshops, theatre workshops, and all these things are geared towards providing a safe environment for people with shared experiences and just to have a little bit of fun and to relax. Throughout the pandemic, so I will start talking a little bit throughout the presentation about how we've adapted our work because of the pandemic. And I'll highlight here how we've transitioned our social inclusion programme to an online format. So I think since the beginning of the pandemic, we've really prioritised keeping our beneficiaries connected, because, as I said before, people are extremely isolated, and this has been exacerbated by COVID. So we now have sessions online. We've had therapeutic workshops and informative workshops. We've had legal Q&As about the impact of COVID on people's asylum cases, as well as wellbeing sessions about, how to look after yourself during the crisis, and also yoga and body and movement workshops. The picture you can see in front of you is from our Tate Exchange project last year, where we collaborated with a number of artists and choreographers to have a session across the weekend in the Tate, which focused on reclaiming bodies and minds. And very excitingly, we've been able to continue this body and movement sessions online. So we have those choreographers working with us, and we are doing these sessions online. So whilst we might not be in the same room as each other, we can all still connect creatively. Our second programme is our safe housing. As we were doing our social inclusion programme, it became quite apparent that people were really suffering and at risk of homelessness or were already homeless. Microrainbow's research that we did in 2013 showed that there was a real need for safe housing. People were facing violence and discrimination in the supported housing they were in. LGBTI people were facing discrimination from the people that they lived with. And this often was homo-transphobic incidents of blackmail, harassment, and verbal, physical, and sexual abuse as well. So in response to this really dire need, Microrainbow started the Safe Housing Programme. And in October 2017, Microrainbow opened the first LGBTI specific safe housing in the UK. And now, 3 years later, in 2020, we have 10 safe houses across London, Birmingham and Leeds. And that constitutes, I think, 16,000 bed spaces each year for LGBTI asylum seekers, as opposed to being, in unsafe housing or on the street. During the pandemic, we have been supporting the people in our housing. We have addressed food poverty by ensuring that we're in contact with local charities and local councils to make sure people receive food parcels. We've also had a social media campaign to enable supporters to provide food parcels to people in our housing through our Amazon wish list. We've also addressed digital poverty, which has been a massive issue and really come to the forefront during this pandemic by ensuring that everyone in the housing has mobile data or Wi-Fi as well. So I'm now going to show you a video which will just kind of give a little bit more context of our Safe Housing project. Hopefully, technology will be kind to me and this will work. Okay.
Every time I would come out, it was like that constant fear of, am I going to come back?
Last time I talked to my mom, but my mom tell, okay, you just humiliate me, but don't come back.
I was always living with that fear and it got very scary.
If I go back, I have brothers, they're gonna kill me.
There are more than 70 countries where being LGBTI is not safe. And when people come to the UK to seek safety, they're still not safe. This is the first safe house for LGBTI asylum seekers in the UK. One of the challenges that LGBTI refugees face that is different from the rest of the refugee population is that because of their sexuality, they are extremely isolated. And this isolation leads to poverty and homelessness. Safety in housing is a very widespread problem. The majority of LGBTI asylum seekers do face some form of violence or abuse, whether that's physical, sexual, or psychological abuse. The need in the countries is massive. There are hundreds of LGBTI asylum seekers every year who need a safe place to be.
It was that I had to be sharing with another male who I have never been in touch with, and I mean, especially since I'm a bit feminine, I was all that time, I was in the back of my head, who's gonna be coming? It's like this uncertainty, it just kills. You could be sleeping at night and just get attacked. Remembering Liverpool being nearly sexually assaulted, and I just felt so insecure and just scared to death.
My name is MD Raihan Malik. I'm from Bangladesh. I came here in 2011. LGBT is like crime in my country. This was so difficult for me because Islam doesn't allow in gay or just LGBT any sexual orientation. I live in before other people that are not LGBT. They don't attack just physically, but mentally attack all time. If I come with you, go from here, just like animal.
There are more than 1,000 people claiming asylum every year on the basis of their sexuality, gender identity, or intersex status. So it is really important that those who claim asylum because of their sexuality or gender identity or intersex status have a safe space where they can live whilst their asylum claim is being decided.
When I'm living alone, I'm thinking, my life is like this, why? I don't know. But now I feel happy because Micro Rainbow International with me. They support me. They're like my family.
Being in this house feels really extraordinary, especially when there's people who you can relate with, by knowing that I can wake up and just do my makeup and be able to fully express myself without having to be afraid that somebody's going to attack me or that someone's going to be judging me.
Because there is lots of LGBT community member here, and this is safe for me because we respect each other, because we are same.
Feeling that love is a huge difference.
Okay, so in addition to kind of the Safe Housing Project, I knew technology would fail at some point. So as I was saying, in the as well as safe housing that we also have a project dedicated to supporting LBTI women, so lesbian, bisexual, trans and intersex women, with, you know, needs that they have that are specific to them. We found that women are at increased risk of facing exploitation or abuse and at a really high risk of homelessness as well in the UK. So we now have a project geared towards reaching out to those women and meaningfully supporting them in accessing housing and other programs like our social inclusion program as well. Our third and final program is our economic inclusion and moving on program. This program is for people who to kind of help build a new life and a future in the UK. So as I'm sure a lot of you will know, in the UK, when someone has been granted refugee status, they then have 28 days before their support ends. So that means 28 days to find housing, employment, benefit, education, and that's a really small amount of time, considering as well that it can take 6 weeks for people's universal credit and for their benefit to come in. So what Micro Rainbow do is help support people in this process. We offer one-to-one support to help with housing and also to help with employability as well. We run employability workshops that help with CV skills, soft skills, and with interview skills as well. And we do this with the help of corporate partners who facilitate workshops. So for example, in the picture here, we have Vodafone, who ran a CV workshop. And during the pandemic, this support has continued. We've continued to run workshops online, and we've done webinars on jobs and volunteering for refugees and asylum seekers as well. And we've also seen quite a big increase in the amount of people who want to access education as well throughout the pandemic. We've got former beneficiaries who have now gone on to fantastic employment and education. We have former beneficiaries who have their own businesses and have been able to continue the career they were doing in their home countries here in the UK. And we also have 3 former beneficiaries who are Micro Rainbow staff members and 1 amazing board member, Alana, as well. So as I said at the beginning, all of these 3 programs intersect and interact to try and ensure people have a sense of future and sense of belonging, a safe place to call home, and friendships and support networks, as well as a feeling of economic independence, really help people feel like they can take control of their lives and their futures, and to also in situations where they may not have been able to feel like they have had control over their lives. What I'm going to do now is I will stop talking and bring in Barry and Alana to give a little bit more context and information about Microrainbow's work and a kind of different perspective. I'll just stop sharing my screen so we can see all of their lovely faces. There they are. Barry and Alana, would you like to kind of introduce yourselves and how you became a part of Microrainbow? Alana, if you want to go first.
Okay, hi, hello everyone. Thank you, Lara. I'm Alana, and I am one of the board of member for Microrainbow. To tell my story, how I get involved with Microrainbow without sounding too self-indulgent, I might just highlight the milestones that I had with Microrainbow in the past 2.5 years since I've been granted. I joined the shelter in January 2018. After arriving in the UK from Malaysia in November 2017. So before I arrived to the shelter, I was homeless, and I was quite lucky because Microrainbow, the first housing was opened just recently last October, as Lara mentioned. And while I was there, I keep attending events hosted by Microrainbow, especially the social inclusion events and several other support groups. And I've also volunteered and did some fundraising for Microrainbow as well. And 5 months later, I was granted asylum. And I left the shelter in August 2018 and start my college education. And 6 months later, landed a job with an IT role in the city. And while I was progressing with my integration after being granted, I kept volunteering for Microrainbow and going to events and representing Microrainbow at some capacity. And then later in October 2019, I was officially announced as the board member of Microrainbow. Shortly after Barry's announcement, I think. It was really an honor to be representing Microrainbow at that level, because for me, Microrainbow has a special place in my heart, and I see this appointment as another form of empowerment to use my voice as somebody who is of Southeast Asian background, queer, transgender, refugee, loves cats, had a sweet tooth, and so many other things. So that's kind of how I started with Microrainbow, and I'm looking forward to continue going forward and giving back to the community that have given so much to me. Barry.
I became involved because, as Ambit said in his introduction, I'm an immigration nationality lawyer, and I've been representing LGBTQI asylum seekers since the early 2000s. So I've been doing this for a long time, and could very much see the need for organisations such as Microrainbow to help my clients, because I'll talk about this more in a second, but you know, I could see that as a lawyer you can do so much, but there is so much more is needed for people when they're going through the asylum system in the UK, and the particular needs of LGBTQI claimants, SOGI claimants, was apparent to me and was sometimes quite frustrating. And so to be invited to be part of the group was an honour, because actually I think that the work is just so important.
Thank you both for your introductions. I'm going to go into a couple of questions for both of you. I think, Alana, I'll start with you. In the presentation, I kind of covered the experiences of LGBTI people as like a whole group, as a homogenous group, but I was wondering if you could kind of talk a little bit more about the challenges that trans asylum seekers might face in the UK.
Okay, I guess in my opinion, the specific challenges faced by transgender asylum seekers is first and foremost would be healthcare access. And it is acknowledged that some trans people might not need too much attention here, meaning if they haven't started medical transition, but most transgender asylum seekers that I've encountered or we have encountered may have transitioned to a certain extent involving medical hormone replacement therapy, and they need that to be continuously ongoing. And that is an obvious challenge with knowing that the NHS, the UK public healthcare system, is understaffed under this austerity period that we're having, and thus having an effect to transgender people who are needing care. The NHS has a specific department to treat transgender patients. I don't know if you know, called Gender Identity Clinic, and it's spread across the UK. And as to date, the minimum waiting time for a trans person seeking transgender-related care with the Gender Identity Clinic is 3 years. It was 18 months before, 2 years ago when I first arrived here, and then it was 2 years, and now it's been up to 3 years. So that's a long waiting times. And you can also go with private care, but it's quite expensive, and there's a cost barrier for asylum seekers who can't afford expensive care. And also self-medicating as well, but it is a dangerous route to go, especially if they don't know what they're doing or the credibility of the sources of the medication. But I've seen some trans people who can be a little creative in getting proper healthcare without the NHS route, because they're very desperate, and I used to be one of them. But yeah, that is one of the problem. But I guess the next problem is, in my opinion, as a transgender person, would be the integration to society, because obviously, I think I have to say that the UK has some very progressive human rights policies in protecting refugees, but I think trans refugees will face a very challenging problem with regards to integration or assimilation, whichever word you might prefer. And I think we all can agree, I can agree personally, that the UK has a deeply rooted transphobia problem, and it was especially exacerbated in the past 2 years. And it is very rife right now as we speak. I wouldn't go into much detail because I have to preserve my mental health, but there was an article in The Guardian in 2017 that they reported on a case from a transgender woman from the UK who sought asylum in New Zealand because she faces lots of transphobic discrimination here in the UK, and it was a successful case in point. So yeah, I would say immigration system could have been better, but I think the problem goes deeper than that. And I guess that's why Micro Rainbow exists, to help make the life of asylum seekers a little bit better. And that's amazing, and we need to keep going with our work.
Thanks, Lana. I'm so glad you raised the point about the kind of the transphobia that's really rife here at the moment. And you're right, it doesn't seem to be going away, and that's why there's is such a need to have services and activists and people who are supporting trans people. From Micro Rainbow's perspective, what could we as an organisation be doing better to support trans people?
Okay, before I go on asserting my opinions on what I think Micro Rainbow could be doing better, because yeah, I want to acknowledge Micro Rainbow is amazing with everything that we are doing, but I guess from the lens of a transgender asylum seekers or refugees who were in the system not too long ago, there are some processes that, especially concerning the healthcare access, as I say, the waiting times for a gender identity clinic is 3 years minimum to date, and while asylum seekers in the system in the Home Office has a minimum of 6 months waiting time before their case can be decided. So operating on that basis, relying on NHS is not an option for transgender healthcare. So I guess a tactical approach could be strategizing to approach local GPs or clinics that are operating nearby our shelters and negotiate some sort of bridging hormones prescription for our transgender beneficiaries. By bridging prescriptions, I mean to prescribe the same hormones, medications as the GIC are prescribing to transgender patients, but on a low dose. So there will be minimal risk or monitoring needs while in the system. That in itself has its own challenge, as the GP's behaviors may differ because they have a discretion to prescribe or not prescribe hormones based on their empathy. So careful consideration and strategy should be adopted there. And yeah, I think that's something that I would like to go forward on doing as a board member for Micro Rainbow in the future, hopefully soon.
Yeah, I agree that healthcare, along with all the other kind of socio-economic stuff that we work on, is so hugely important to everybody, but particularly to trans people. So, and I'm sure lots of people will probably have questions on that. So hopefully, please do send them through. Barry, I'll move on to you. How does a holistic approach to integration help your work as a lawyer?
I mean, it's the fact that I'm a lawyer is the point. Is that what I need to do is I need to prepare the SOGI claimant's asylum claim. I need to do a statement. I need to get the evidence, and I need them to focus. And I need them to come to my office when, at the time I ask them to come to my office. I need them to speak to me on the phone when I need them to speak to me on the phone. I need to get this claim in its best possible case, its best possible way, because I know how to win an asylum claim in front of the Home Office. That's great. It's easy. I've got a safe home life. I've got a stable home life. I can concentrate on my job. The issue I have is that though I know we've got to get through this claim in order to try and build a person's life in the UK, if your day-to-day existence is a struggle, you are not focusing on your asylum claim. You're focusing on when you're going to sleep that night. You're focusing on whether somebody's going to, like, whether you feel safe in the very bedroom you're supposed to sleep. You're focusing on whether you've got, you mentioned, whether you've got mobile data to actually, you know, look up the thing I've asked you to look up, contact the person I've asked you to contact. If my client is not focusing on these things, then they aren't helping me prepare their claim. And I think of so many examples, and I think of one claimant who essentially, while I was trying to claim, he had left his government given accommodation because that accommodation was just too frightening for him. Some nights he could stay with friends if he was lucky. Some nights he actually just had sex with people that he met, because actually it was through sex that he was finding accommodation, and he was finding somewhere that he actually felt he had some safety. He's doing that while I'm saying, actually, I need to talk to you about what was happening in Iraq when you were this age. What has happened in the UK? And his attention was somewhere else, because it's so understandable. So having groups out there that are looking at this holistically, that can deal with those immediate needs to actually be part of UK society, to actually just to feel like you actually can, you've got some headspace to deal with your claim, is so important. And that's what Micro Rainbow gives. And also our friends at UK Lesbian and Gay Immigration Group with their meetings that people go and the support there too, is they're so essential to me as a lawyer, because then I can focus on what I'm supposed to do. and I've got other people helping them with all those other needs. You need to unmute.
So that holistic approach kind of can help people, as you said, kind of get in the headspace where they're able to be in a position to get their claim prepared. Can actually that, having those kind of services there, can that help people to get their refugee status? Can that help convince the Home Office that they are a refugee and that they have credibility and all these things?
Well, I think it does, because one of the issues we have as, you know, as a British-born person is that we suddenly expect people to be able to come to the UK and then start talking about their identity or their experiences in a way that I do as a man from Birmingham. Suddenly you're like, oh, I can talk about being gay and I can talk about my partners, where actually you've spent your whole life just actually not talking about it, because it's the not talking about it that has saved your life. And I find that when people are in spaces, especially in the houses, they are suddenly living a life where actually talking is the norm. Being themselves is the norm. They're not always thinking, because even in the UK, sadly, you know, if you are living with the community from where you're from, say if you're from Bangladesh and you're living in the Bangladeshi community, you're frightened in that community. You're still having to deny who you are to get the support of that community. Whereas when you're in one of our safe houses, you actually suddenly you're like, ah, hang on, you can see the video. I can actually be who I am. The man from Bangladesh explained it. He could be who he is, and that enables them to then start talking to me, and very importantly, start talking to the Home Office when they have their big substantive interview about their needs, because you have to be able to do that, sadly, in the system that we've got in order to win asylum.
Thank you. And I kind of asked a similar question to Alana, but how could Micro Rainbow change our work with regards to legal advice or other aspects to help support people in a more effective way?
Yeah, it's the legal advice I want to say something about, is that I think, and it's a funny thing to say in a conference that's very much focused on asylum, I know as a lawyer that there are certain countries in the world that people come from that I can, if I prepare the case well, I will get them asylum. They will win their case. There are other parts of the world where it's more difficult. There are people who have come to the UK who may be from a country that isn't necessarily, people think, the worst place in the world to be LGBTQI, but in fact they've been here unlawfully, they're overstayers, they may have partners, they don't fit within the Refugee Convention, but they absolutely need sanctuary. And I think what I'd like to do is, in my job as a lawyer, I deal with human rights on a wider basis than just asylum, people's private life, their family life, and I get people to stay, not just for asylum claimants to stay, not just on the Refugee Convention, but also on the Human Rights Convention. And actually what I would like to do with Micro Rainbow is I'd like to widen our legal advice work so that we're not just helping people who can get within the Refugee Convention, but also people, they might not be refugees in the classic sense of the term, but they need sanctuary in the UK. And actually, that's where I'd like to go in the next step. We've got lots to do, but that's where I'd like the next step to be.
Fab. Thank you, Barry.